Do you consider yourself to be a spiritual guy? Is that why you're kind of pursuing that, or what makes you feel called to do that? Is it just part of the entrepreneurial journey for you?
So the reason why I'm doing it now is I realize that I only get into spirituality in the past when bad things happen, right?
It's a fixing mechanism.
Which is a horrible thing. Like, why should I meditate only when things are bad?
Yeah.
Right? Why should I only like be grateful? Like, I remember when everything was like falling down around me, like lockdown, freaking like losing a bunch of money, like worried about what my next pivot would be. And that's when I'm like, oh, you know, let me like reframe my mind. Let me write 10 things that I'm grateful for every single day, morning and night. Let me meditate for like 2 to 4 hours a day. Cause Dave, the guy that owns Istana, was like, dude, you got to meditate for 10 hours a day. I'm like, okay, I don't know about that. Maybe I'll try 2 or 4. I'm like, why is that the case? Right. So I think now I'm doing it more to just remind myself that I shouldn't stop the things that get me out of that funk hole.
Yeah.
Because if I could continue doing that when things are good and like I'm happy and I'm healthy and like everything is good, then maybe there's like another level that I could reach, you know? So I'm using it more like a tool. I think a good rule for business is don't compete with Jeff Bezos and don't compete with China, right? And it seems like when you're in the Amazon business now, like China's just coming in and, you know, like cutting out us as the middleman, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, Amazon was like pretty hard. And then you start seeing where like you're starting to see, okay, how are people actually making money, right? And when you look at them and you don't look at what they're saying, but you watch their feet to see what they're moving, it seems like most people that are the most successful ones are literally building an audience, asking them what it is that they want, and just finding or sourcing the thing that is that they want.
Yeah.
Right. Like, for example, I remember when I went to this Mind Valley event in Croatia, right? And at this event, there was this super spiritual person. I think he was the guy that taught Doctor Strange and that cast exactly what to do that. Apparently that's like a real thing in the Marvel movies. We were talking about Marvel earlier. And he was like saying, write a long list of all of your values. So here I was just like, okay, freedom, love, connection, authenticity, like fun. And then on the right side, he was like, write all the ways you do to make money online. So I'm like, oh man, hashtag digital nomad, passive income. I'm like, okay, cool. And he was like saying, okay, all the ways that you're making money online that don't align with your values, stop doing them.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is crazy, but like, I'll try this out for like 30, 60 days. So that's eventually when I ended up coming home from Croatia. I was like, let me do this podcast thing. I don't know like how it's going to make money. I don't know where it's going to go. The first podcast completely bombed, right? But then the second podcast was Hana Lei, right? For those that don't know, like she's like a prodigy. She's going to save the planet.
13 or 14 years old, and she's got a huge following.
Dude, that ended up blowing up. And then after that, I interviewed like my one mentor that makes like $1 million per month profit. And that one blew up. And then now I'm like, okay, like what do I do now? And then this is how I like fell into this model on accident, because now I built an audience on accident. Before I was known as like the armpit hairy guy that teaches people how to make $100 a day. And here are 2 podcasts, like literally within 2 videos, it just blew up.
Yeah.
So my mentor was like, they keep on DMing me on Instagram to sell them something. And I'm like, but we don't have anything to sell. And he's like, let's do a webinar, right? So I ended up promoting like a webinar where he was the one that did the selling for me. And I'm just like the guy that was like, how the hell did this happen? Dude, that was like the most insane webinar ever, because we went to his place. It was like really hot. We didn't have this nice studio here. So I literally was doing this webinar. I had a tub of ice like in a bowl, and I was like literally standing in it while I was like doing this webinar. We had like a little bit of cameras and videos, but it was like karaoke mics and whatnot. But dude, like we got, I think there was like 400 people on the webinar. And I'm just like, wow, I can't believe this, crazy, this awesome. And he did the selling. And like we had another buddy, Hanson, there who was like helping us with like the production and everything. And by the time that it closed, like I thought we made like $10,000 in that. But I think we were like 2 or 3 hours in, and I looked at him and he was just like, keep on going. And I'm like, okay, maybe we're doing really well, right? And I'm like, okay, it's I think 1 a.m. at this point, because we did it morning time or whatever, like US time. But by the time the conversation was done and he was like, okay, let's finish, we were on the call for like 4 or 5 hours. Dude, it was like 70 grand for that.
Yeah.
And then I went to the bathroom and I came back and I was like, did anything update? And he was like, yeah, we just made another 10 grand. And I was like, are you serious? And that was literally within 30 days of the intention of, let me start a podcast. And like what you were talking about, instead of looking for the idea, I just interviewed someone that I was passionate about. An audience came, they asked for a product. We didn't have a product. And then someone else sold it. You
created it out of the circumstances of what unfolded through what you were doing.
Dude, it was nuts, man. I was like,
I kind of feel very optimistic for what's possible for humanity, because I'm very, very sure that we are moving through something. I've been through enough pain in my life to realize that it's those moments which, like, you can't have the really great life unless you've had those times of pain. And I think humanity is just going through some kind of purging or cleansing, and there's a lot of truths coming out. There's a lot of things bubbling to the surface which maybe have been, hidden for 50 years, 100 years, however long, and those things are coming to the surface. So if you look at the surface, it's like it's a scary world. But if you look at what's behind that, it's like, well, that's going to end up being good, because we need that to happen. We need to move through this pain. And I'm not saying there aren't real things happening in the world, and don't want to diminish what people are actually going through, but I think there's a bigger picture. And that's where I feel, and maybe it's just my intuition, maybe I'm psychic, I don't know, but I feel very positive and optimistic about that. So even there's some really fucking scary things coming to the surface, it's like, well, okay, well, that's shocking, but my mind always knows. I know, my heart knows what's on the other side.